Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Today, I'm your wife, Lisa said with a slight twist of her body, closing the space between us as her face slowly drew near. Her face was right in front of mine, tempting, as if trying to peer into me. I could feel her breath at that tantalizingly close distance, our noses almost touching. In that moment, I had no idea that our ordinary married life was about to be swept up in a storm. Ryan, how about you help out with the vacuuming once in a while? From where I was relaxing on the living room sofa, I heard my wife's quiet voice. Normally, I wouldn't think much of a comment like that, but this time, it stirred a tiny pang of guilt somewhere deep inside. We've been married for 3 years now. I met my wife back in college, at a club. We ended up sitting next to each other by chance at a drinking party, and I was drawn to her bright and straightforward personality. Her honesty was refreshing and put me at ease, and being around her gave me a peaceful feeling. She was someone I could talk to without any pressure, so much so that even silence felt comfortable. Just being with her made my heart race. We started dating in our second year and, after graduation, naturally began living together. After 4 years of living together, we finally got married. Before we were married, we didn't have any specific rules about household chores. We just did things as they needed to be done. We cooked, washed the dishes, and did the laundry whenever we felt like it. We'd clean up whenever things looked messy. There weren't any set rules, but that way of doing things actually worked well for us. My wife isn't a stay-at-home wife. She works at a real estate company, so I can't shake the feeling of guilt at leaving most of the household chores to her. And yet, I can't deny that a part of me harbored a sweet, foolish hope that marriage would somehow free me from housework. Before I knew it, I had nearly given up on doing any household chores at all. Our newlywed life isn't filled with that sweet, romantic atmosphere people talk about. Maybe it's because we lived together for so long before marriage, or maybe it's just our personalities. I can't say for sure. But that doesn't mean we're unhappy. In fact, having her around makes home feel comfortable. When she's not there, I feel strangely unsettled. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in orange hues and casting a gentle glow over the lakeside campground. A soft breeze was blowing as Sean and I sat by the campfire, sipping canned beer and watching the flames dance. From the outdoor kitchen, I could hear the cheerful voices of my wife and Lisa as they prepared the barbecue. Sean is a co-worker of mine, and Lisa is his wife. Sometimes, the four of us go camping together like this. Sean and I joined the company the same year, and he's one of the few people I feel truly close to at work. We attended each other's weddings, and since then, we've kept up this family friendship. My wife, Sean, and I are all the same age, but Lisa is 4 years older than Sean. From the moment I met her, I felt a calm maturity radiate from her gentle tone and composed demeanor, a kind of warmth beyond her years. Her relaxed gestures and soft smile seemed to have this magical way of making the whole atmosphere around her softer. Sometimes, I feel a bit envious of Sean, seeing how he gets to have someone so kind and nurturing all to himself. Every now and then, I find myself lost in thought like this. One day, while cooking, I happened to glance over at Lisa and our eyes met. She tilted her head slightly to the right, giving me a curious smile, and suddenly, an old memory came rushing back. On the day of Sean's wedding, Lisa sat quietly by the aisle, looking like the lead in a play. She wore her wedding dress flawlessly, captivating everyone's attention. The pure white gown suited her perfectly, radiating a beauty that went beyond mere youthfulness. She exuded a kind of grace and confidence that only a mature woman could possess, creating a moment so beautiful it felt timeless. Her smile was a mixture of happiness, anticipation, and just a touch of nervousness, all of which only made her more alluring. At that time, my gaze was naturally drawn to her, and I found myself unable to look away. It was as if I was irresistibly pulled toward her, like her presence alone occupied a different world. Noticing my stare, she looked over at me and gave me that same mysterious smile she's giving now, tilting her head slightly to the right. Back then, the thought had crossed my mind. If only I could take her away from here. Dark feelings had churned in my heart, feelings I couldn't explain. And here she was now, leaning in with that same enigmatic smile, as if to tempt me. This camping trip with Sean and the others was making my heart race in ways I didn't expect. There was the thrill of seeing Lisa, mixed with a sudden pang of jealousy toward Sean. Despite my inner turmoil, I found myself enjoying the moment. Ready? Lisa walked over, carrying a tray of food ingredients. Her large eyes, high nose, and long, shiny hair were beautiful, but what caught my attention the most was her figure. Slim and well-proportioned, her curves were perfectly balanced, especially the smooth line from her waist to her hips like an hourglass. In the setting sun, her silhouette stood out even more, and a light citrus scent drifted over from her, making my heart flutter. I remembered something Sean had once mentioned. It was Lisa who'd made the first move in their relationship. She'd even been the one to confess her feelings. Despite her calm, quiet appearance, she was actually the assertive one when it came to romance. That unexpected side of her only made my heart race more. I couldn't help but feel a bit envious. The next day, my wife seemed to be in a slightly irritated mood. "Just stop. What are you even thinking?" She suddenly snapped at me as I was sitting on the living room sofa watching TV. I didn't even have time to react before her sharp voice filled the room. On the TV, a variety show was playing, with young comedians bantering, and I'd been laughing out loud at their jokes. She must have been upset seeing me laugh like that. "Oh, come on. You act like you're some kind of prince or something." I tried to joke, but that comment only seemed to add fuel to the fire. It was as if my foolish laughter had triggered a release of pent-up resentment. Marital arguments often start over little things like this. If one side steps back and holds their tongue, things can calm down. But once resentment has surfaced, it's not easy to put it back down. I think the last thing I said was something along the lines of, "Well, you go out drinking with your friends all the time, don't you?" After that, she stopped speaking altogether. A cool silence settled over the living room, and with it, our unspoken distance grew, and any hope for reconciliation slipped away. One day, on my way home from work, I ran into Sean by chance. It had already been a week since my wife and I had fought. "Still not made up with her yet?" Sean asked, and before we knew it, we decided to go grab a drink. "Welcome," we heard as we stepped into a loud sports bar. My wife normally dislikes places like this because of the smoke, but at that moment, I didn't care. We ordered 2 draft beers and a couple of Budweisers, calling out our order over the noise. We each grabbed our beers and took long gulps, finishing about half in one go. At first, we talked about trivial things, the baseball game, the recent Olympics, but after a few more rounds, our gripes started to slip out. "It's so frustrating. We haven't been able to talk properly in a week," I sighed, finally opening up to Sean about the fight with my wife. He gave a bitter smile and nodded. "Yeah, same here." It sounded like things weren't going well between Sean and Lisa either. Sean works in sales, and, with the end of the year coming up, he was coming home late every night. Lisa, who works at a bakery, has to start her day early. By the time Sean wakes up, Lisa is already gone, and when he comes home, she's already asleep. Their mismatched schedules seem to be getting on Lisa's nerves more and more. From an outsider's perspective, it might seem like a problem that could be solved with a simple conversation. But issues between a married couple are rarely that simple. The complex web of emotions between partners isn't something that outsiders can easily unravel. Sean and I drank our fill and caught the subway home just before the last train. I bought a cake from my wife's favorite bakery, hoping it could be a small peace offering. Next weekend, Lisa and I are going to swap places, my wife suddenly said as we were getting ready for bed. I didn't immediately understand what she meant. "Swap places with Lisa?" I repeated, struggling to grasp the idea. My mind raced with a bunch of different scenarios, but I still couldn't make sense of it. "I saw it on TV recently," she explained. "There's a show where couples swap partners to gain a better appreciation of each other." I remembered the show she was talking about, a reality show where a comedian spends a day with a healing type of celebrity. The premise is that, at first, he's swept away by the celebrity's kindness, but eventually, he starts to feel his wife's absence and realizes her value. It was the kind of predictable story you see a lot in TV shows. Is she actually trying to do something like that? I thought, smirking a little to myself. But as the idea of spending a day with Lisa crossed my mind, I realized it didn't seem like such a bad idea after all. Thinking about it that way, it actually started to sound like an appealing idea. But at the same time, the thought of my wife spending time with Sean made me feel a strange sense of unease. It sounds good, right? My wife's tone suggested she'd already made up her mind. Did Sean and Lisa agree to this? I stabbed my fork into a slice of strawberry shortcake and asked. Of course, she replied. We just need your answer now. Her forceful tone sparked a flicker of irritation in me. I took a big bite of the cake, the sweetness of the strawberry spreading across my tongue as a strange feeling of something breaking free hit me. The anxiety over my wife and Sean spending time together suddenly dissipated. This isn't something I wanted. I'm just going along with it. Thinking that way, the idea of spending time with Lisa started to feel more and more tempting. I couldn't suppress the growing excitement within me. I found myself looking forward to this partner swap day. On the day of the exchange, my wife left around noon. She had done her makeup a bit more glamorously than usual, as if she was excited about meeting Sean. I'll be back later, she said as she walked out. I gave her a brief, nonchalant goodbye. To be honest, I felt a bit nervous about Lisa's arrival, but I did my best to keep my cool. About 30 minutes after my wife left, Lisa arrived, right on schedule. Instead of coming straight into the house, she suggested we go grocery shopping to prepare for dinner. We stepped out together, heading to a wine specialty shop in Manhattan to pick out champagne and wine, then stopped by a gourmet store to buy roast beef and cheese. Ryan, should we hold hands while we walk? Lisa asked, glancing over at a couple walking hand in hand nearby. Oh, sure, I replied, hesitating for a second before reaching out to take her offered hand. My heart leapt at that moment. A fleeting worry passed through my mind someone might see us, but that thought only made the situation more exhilarating. When I first met Lisa at Sean's wedding, it wasn't mere admiration I felt for her. It was definitely the stirrings of love. That ache of longing in my chest proved it. To a wonderful night together, Lisa said, lifting her glass of champagne with its soft pink bubbles, her eyes meeting mine. After we finished the champagne, we moved on to the red wine, and by the time we were pouring the second bottle, we both felt completely at ease. Though we'd seen each other a lot before, being together like this, just the two of us, created an atmosphere that was hard to put into words. As I poured the red wine into her glass, Lisa suddenly moved closer, sitting down next to me on the sofa. The space between us shrank, and without realizing it, we started sharing our frustrations about our respective marriages. But despite the serious topic, we talked about our spouses in a lighthearted way, almost as if we were exchanging funny stories. Lisa's cheeks were flushed pink from the wine, and her usually calm eyes looked softer, more vulnerable. You're so kind, Ryan. If I'd married you, I don't think I'd have any complaints at all, she said, looking at me with a dreamy expression. The words, if I'd married you, sent a thrill through me. The thought crossed my mind if I'd married Lisa instead. I found myself wanting to hold her, to feel the warmth of this gentle, nurturing woman. Leaning into her comforting presence, I couldn't help but feel a surge of resentment toward Sean. He had someone as wonderful as Lisa by his side, yet he couldn't make her truly happy. I found myself thinking, I could do better. I could make her happier. We moved from the dining table to the sofa, sinking into the cushions as our conversation slowed. Soon, a silence fell between us, a silence that only intensified my feelings for her. Lisa's presence seemed to fill the room, while the thought of my wife faded further and further from my mind. Just then, my phone rang, snapping me back to reality. It was my wife. How are things going? Are you having a good time with Lisa? Her voice sounded oddly upbeat. Looking at her expression on the video call, I thought she seemed a little forced, as though she was hiding something. Yeah, we're having a nice time, just enjoying some drinks. I replied curtly, ending the call without saying much else. For a moment, I thought I detected a hint of vulnerability in her expression. Was she feeling insecure about us? Jealous, even? Imagining her in that state made me feel an unexpected pang of longing. My wife clearly cares about me. Maybe I still. So, how does it feel being away from your wife? Lisa asked, leaning in close. Being apart makes me appreciate her more, I answered, and Lisa looked a bit surprised, her eyes widening before she puffed out her cheeks in a playful pout. Well, that's nice and all. But today, I'm the one who's your wife, she said, tilting her head with a flirtatious smile. The distance between us closed even more as Lisa leaned in, her face right in front of mine. Our eyes met at that intimate, almost breathless distance, and for a few seconds, neither of us said a word. What do you mean by that? I asked, unable to hold back any longer. Oh, you already know, she whispered, teasingly pinching my arm. At that moment, it felt like something deep inside me snapped, breaking through all restraint. Every suppressed feeling burst forth, and I couldn't control myself anymore. I took a deep breath, hesitating only for a moment, before finally reaching out to wrap my arms around her in a tight embrace. In that instant, it felt as though all boundaries between us had collapsed, and a mix of forbidden exhilaration and overwhelming liberation washed over me. Without a word, we leaned into each other and kissed, sharing a deep breath as the sweet warmth of the moment enveloped us. What had been only a dream for so long was now real, unfolding between us. My hand found its way under her clothes, feeling the warmth of her skin. As I wrapped her in my touch, I could feel her heartbeat quicken, her entire body responding to our closeness. When she reached for me, I could barely contain the surge of excitement. Our breathing grew heavier, and the intensity of our desire filled the room. As our movements synchronized, the rhythm between us built, both of us completely in tune, our connection deepening. With each shared heartbeat, each shared breath, we moved as one, swept up in a tide of passion that carried us higher and higher. The world around us disappeared, leaving only us and the growing sense of release. When the peak came, it was like an electric current racing through us, leaving us breathless and spent. We looked at each other, smiling, sharing a moment of warmth and peace. I brushed her hair back gently and whispered, "I'm so happy." She echoed the words, and we held each other close. In the silence that followed, only the sound of our hearts remained, steady and comforting. We had shared an unforgettable night, one that made the world outside fade away. The next day, my wife returned home in the afternoon. I welcomed her with a smile, trying to brush away the lingering tension between us. But there was a shadow on her face, the same vulnerability I'd sensed in her expression during our video call the night before. Was she feeling jealous at that moment? But now, standing close to her, I realized it wasn't jealousy I felt from her, it was something closer to guilt. That feeling immediately made me think of her and Sean. Could something have happened between them? A week later, my wife left the house, saying she was meeting a friend for lunch. She put on lipstick, the same bold shade she wore on the day of the swap. Feeling uneasy, I decided to follow her. And, as I'd expected, she met up with Sean. The two of them disappeared into the crowd, walking hand in hand. I watched them go, silently. I could have confronted her right there, but I didn't. Because while one story was ending, another was about to begin. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Lisa. "It's such a beautiful day, isn't it?" Lisa rolled down the car window and took a deep breath, a gentle smile on her lips as she replied, "Yes, it really is." The fresh, citrusy scent of her hair filled the air around us. I decided not to interfere with my wife's relationship with Sean. Instead, I chose to walk a new path with Lisa. We drove toward Lake Tahoe, the mountains drawing closer, the green of the trees filling our view. "Want to take a break at a cafe nearby?" I suggested, and Lisa smiled, looking pleased. The crisp mountain air felt refreshing, and the cool breeze flowed gently between us, as if the shimmering lake surface ahead was reflecting a quiet vision of our future.